Okay, where are we going?
All right, everybody. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the very first episode of the live podcast called Heroes Need Help 2, Breaking PTSD Silence. Our first guest on this show is Sergeant Chris Scallon, retired as a 25-year veteran with the Norfolk Police Department, holds a master's in psychology, BS in criminal justice, and certified in critical incident stress management from the University of Maryland Emergency Health Services. He provided direct mental health and or substance abuse services in addition to connecting first responders, veterans, and their families to resources. He is the current chair of peer response for the National Consortium for the Prevention of Law Enforcement Suicide and consultant responder for the Department of Justice Anti-Terrorism and Emergency Assistance Program, AEAP, providing services following mass terror events. He was the founder and first director of the Norfolk Police Department's Critical Incident Stress Management and Peer Support Unit Crisis Intervention co-coordinator for the Norfolk Police Department. Sergeant Scallon is a peer and current board member of Virginia Law Enforcement Assistance Program, a certified peer with the West Coast Post-Trauma Retreat First Responder Support Network. He was the former client services representative for Lakeview Health Addiction Treatment and Recovery Management, working exclusively with first responders, veterans, and their families. National Public Safety Liaison for Shatterproof First Responders and Veterans Program. Former director of public safety support for Chateau Recovery. Having been involved in multiple shootings, active shooter mass casualty responses, the latest Walmart mass shooting in University in Virginia, he is intimately familiar with trauma and the consequences of exposure. Chris, our first guest. First, I want to say from the bottom of my heart, and I know my brother feels this way too, thank you so much for your service. And thank you for everything that you've done for our country. I am so honored and blessed to have you on our show, and especially to have you as our first guest.
No, it is. It's a privilege for me to be on with you guys. You guys are awesome, and I appreciate giving us the venue to kind of and the platform to talk about this because you can reach so many people.
I've worked a lot for AM Healthcare and for After Action as a certified recovery coach, and I've worked firsthand with a lot of first responders, and the stories that I've heard have just blown my mind with the amount of bravery that exists within people like you, Chris. So the first thing I want you to tell me is, can you take me back to the first moment where you knew you wanted to become a first responder and what called you to do this work?
You know, I mean, I grew up in like my adolescence in New York, and it just, I always felt, again, not being born in this country, coming here, always felt a gratitude for being, coming to America, so to speak. It sounds corny, a little bit cliche, but it is. And you're like, what can I do? What can I do to support my community? And it has to be fun. So I'm going to be selfish in that regard. So whether it be working as a medic or a firefighter or a cop or the military, all those things to me made so much sense. And I wasn't an office guy, and I just was drawn to it. I remember seeing, like anytime that there was an incident, and there were a couple in Brooklyn where I grew up, that there were cops and firemen, and I'm like, how awesome is that job to go where everybody is trying to get away from, but that's where the action is at. And it's just, to me, I was just drawn to it, I guess.
What is it like? This is something that I'm very interested in hearing about, and something that I think is very important for families of first responders to hear, because you're dealing with such high crisis experiences, right? And you're dealing with such massive stress, a type of stress that I don't think anyone would really ever understand unless you are a first responder. And so this podcast, I wanted to do not just for the first responders, but I also wanted to have a space for the families of first responders. And I want to know, how can the families of first responders help their loved ones when they come home and they just left such an intense, traumatic, tragic experience that you were just talking about? What can they do to help their family members?
Yeah, so that's a super complex and an awesome question. The big issue is that husband, wife, wives, husband, partner, or whatever the relationship is, it's a team. It's not one or the other. And I've heard this a lot of times, and I've adopted it. Marriage isn't 50-50, or that your partnership isn't 50-50. Sometimes it's 90-10. Sometimes it's 70-30 the other way. So we kind of fill in the gaps. But the most important thing, especially when we're dealing with families, is you have to have the conversation before it goes sideways. In other words, we know what we're going to see, whatever you are, in first responder, military, you're going to be exposed to some pretty terrific stuff, right? And just unimaginable trauma and despair. That have the conversation beforehand. And a lot of times, what I see as far as why relationships kind of go south in this field is because the first responder tends to shelter their loved ones from all the horrific things that they see. And I tell them, if you want to destroy your marriage, I teach a class on that because I'm awesome at it, right? I've been married a couple times, so I can tell you what not to do. And what I tell them is have the conversation. Now, I know most spouses may not want to hear the hardcore version. And since I'm talking to people that are very familiar with Hollywood, it's like coming home and asking him or her, do you want to hear the Disney version of what my day was? Or do you want to hear the Quentin Tarantino version of what my day was? And it's up to them to make the decision. And sometimes it's as easy as, and I talk to my wife about this all the time, like if I've had a rough day dealing with folks that are in crisis, or when I was on the job, I may need a second. I may need a pause. I'm not insulting you. I'm not being mean to you. I'm trying to decompress. And back in the day, in previous relationships, I'd actually park in my driveway and not go inside because I was like, let me just decompress right here. And I don't know what that looks like from the inside, but I can just imagine he doesn't want to come in, like what's going on? What's all this stuff? So it's communication. And so each scenario is a little bit different, but if you have that open line of communication, it's phenomenal. It'll work out better than it won't.
I know that feeling of decompression, especially after, not in the same way, but after a long day or being on movie set or, doing all kinds of things that can be stressful. It's so important to like be able to just have those moments where you can just like, okay, take a breath. But I think a lot of people don't know what to do or how to decompress, or that they should decompress, or that it's important to decompress. I don't know if you talk about the importance of people needing to like take time or decompress from their day or whatever, or that's even something that's talked about.
Yeah. So, and here's the thing, whether you're in a shooting or you're in a situation where you're on a movie set or you're doing something that you're so fully involved in, again, stress is stress. It doesn't give a shit how it gets to you, right? So what I want to say is, when you go through that, right, you have to understand, is this a mental decompression that I'm going through, or is it physical? Because I'm sure with all the stuff you guys have done, there's such a physicality to it. There's a difference between being physically tired and mentally tired.
Yeah.
And so understanding what that is will help you figure out what tools you need to kind of, decompress appropriately.
What are some signs and symptoms of people who are first responders that they are mentally and physically stressed?
Oh, I mean, there's a myriad of them, but the most common ones are withdrawing, kind of having that blunted affect where you just, the world could be on fire around you and there's no emotion. And again, the biggest one I see is withdrawn or, and this is at work, very isolated, but at home might become a little bit more aggressive because we tend to hurt the people that we love the most. More than we're nicer to strangers a lot, again, for work reasons and for just political reasons, stuff like that. But when we get home and our guard's down, I'm more likely to lash out at my wife or my family than I am to a stranger. So when we start seeing that, it's any behavior that's a departure from their normative behavior. In other words, if I'm really talkative and I come home and I'm not talkative, that's a departure from what I'm normally like. But on the opposite end, if I'm normally very quiet and now I can't shut up, that's a change. So I'm not looking for a specific action or behavior or personality. I'm looking for, has this changed from normal, whatever that normal is, if that makes sense. So some people like overeat when they're stressed and some people don't eat when they're stressed. So both are pretty harmful.
I think it's, and I love that you said that, right? And I think it's important to check in on people even when they look like they're fine. In a lot of the groups that I run, I talk a lot about the power of vulnerability. I talk about the importance of vulnerability. And one of the things that comes up a lot in my groups is that men feel that they are weak for being vulnerable. And I do not think that there has been a safe space for men to talk about their feelings, to talk about their PTSD, to even admit that they have any feeling. Can you speak to that? Because if we're saying, hey, we want you to come home and we want you to be honest with your family, and also they've been raised in a culture that has not supported being honest, how do we change that?
Oh yeah, that's an awesome question. I'm reminded of, I'm a huge Brene Brown fan. She's phenomenal, and she said something that really stuck with me, and I've kind of applied every time I used it. I'm engaging with somebody, and most first responders and veterans want to be courageous. We thrive on the fact that we are courageous in the face of all this adversity, right? And she said something that stuck with me. She goes, "You cannot be courageous without being vulnerable, and it's okay." And I will tell you, when because I came from a very dark place, with self-harm, with suicidal ideations, suicide attempts, drinking, using pharmaceuticals inappropriately, all this stuff. I came from there. The reason that held me back the most, and this feeds into the culture. And I co-authored an article with a friend of mine, Dr. Amanda Farrell, on there's no crying in police work, and we looked at how race, gender, ethnicity, and culture plays a role in how we process trauma. And the one thing that I've come up with, and that I've really kind of lived through, the day I stopped caring about what other people thought of me was the day I really started getting healthier. And I tell that to people. I said, you're really concerned with folks that probably aren't as concerned about you as you think they are. And really, my biggest fear, especially going to get help, whether it be going into treatment or whether it be going to whatever it is, a retreat or whatever, I was so worried, not about the retreat. I could do anything. Coming back, how's everybody going to look at me? So that's the culture that we're brought up in, right? And I'm Hispanic and I'm Colombian. I grew up, with nothing but female Colombian women around me, and men don't cry and you don't hit women. I mean, it was a very machismo culture. And then, going into the medics and the fire department and the military and the police department, that doesn't change. It's very push that stuff down. So I encourage people, again, you're not as important as you think you are because you think everybody's looking at you and like judging you. They're not. And really, there's going to be people that don't like you or that think you're weak or think you're strong. That's okay. I'm all right with that. I've made enough friends at this point. The day I really stopped caring about that aspect of it, then I could start looking at me. And okay, you know what? And I bring this up because today is the anniversary of a friend that we lost about 11 years ago. His name is Brian Jones. He was an officer, killed in line of duty today 11 years ago. And I'm looking at all this stuff, and I remember cops, firemen, and stuff like that. Nobody wants to cry at work and blah, blah. There wasn't a dry eye at his funeral. There wasn't a dry eye at James Gilbert's funeral or these other folks. Or you go to any one of the World Trade Center funerals that you go, there's no dry. It's okay to cry then, but not at work if you're a little bit overcome. That's emotion. It's okay to do that. And again, once we don't worry about what other people think about it, we're good.
I wanted for you to explain to people what a first responder residential treatment center is like, and because I don't think there might be some people in here that don't even know that exists.
Yeah.
What that is.
Yeah. So I will tell you the majority of the folks that I deal with that are in crisis, that are going at that time, are super scared that it's like a One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Nurse Ratched, very sterile environment. It's such a comfortable environment. It's a structured environment. Again, it's the fear of the unknown. After action, it's like going to one of the nicest bed and breakfasts that focuses primarily on your mental health and or your addiction issues or your substance issues and stuff like that. But it's not as scary as we're making it out to be. So it's a very comfortable, safe space. that's structured, that focuses on everything. It's like a very holistic kind of thing, mind, body, because it's not so much for us, for first responders and vets. A lot of people think it's just what we see and all the work that we do and the environment that we're in and stuff like that. That's part of it. It's how we eat. So there's a health component to it, a nutrition component to it. There's journaling. There's, just the simple thing of breathing properly done and taught can calm and reduce stress and just calm it. So it's not one thing. And it's for the first time, like I said earlier, it's like the first time that people that have been struggling, walking wounded for the most part in their careers, get to truly focus on themselves with the benefit of having the structured guide of experienced peers and or clinicians. So it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. I almost would start drinking just to go back, but I think I'll stay where I'm at.
So if a first responder is in his first group, right, and he's used to having everything stay bottled up inside, and talking about your feelings is one of the most terrifying things you could do, what do you tell that person? How do you get him to start opening up?
Stop giving a shit about these other people. This is about you. This is not about anybody else. It's really not. And with those, and by the way, if something goes sideways within a group, probably the best place for it to happen, because you have somebody there that's, clinically trained that can kind of go through it and kind of de-escalate and figure out what's going on. But it's a place to workshop it. And so again, that falls under the mindset that I don't want you thinking I'm weak because I didn't do something or I did something that made me feel, kind of vulnerable or whatever that is. And just to kind of say it. And it takes a little bit. I'm preaching this, but I was very much guilty of not wanting to open up. And I was a fly on the wall for the most part, in the early stages of me going to, whether it be treatment or help or clinical stuff. And I would just sit there and I'm like, yeah, and I would judge. I'd be like that. But I was really just focused on myself. And once you kind of initially get over that, which really it's not so far along, like kind of lived, then you won't shut up. And I'm sure you've seen it time and time again. You get the person that doesn't want to talk, and by the end of the session, you're like, all right, we got enough time to do this tomorrow and the next day. So yeah.
Yeah, well, and I'm sorry, you were cutting out earlier when we were talking about vulnerability and Dr. Brene Brown and the power of vulnerability. And for anybody that has not watched that video, it is one of the top 5 most watched TED Talk videos. It is the power of vulnerability. And then people don't know a lot about the other one, which is about shame. And
she's a shame expert.
Oh, she's a shame expert. But I think, like, to what you were saying, vulnerability gives people permission to be vulnerable. So when you're talking about your feelings, I don't want you to see yourself as someone who's weak. You are a leader. And that's why I love that you were on here talking about how do we get more men, more women to be vulnerable, to be courageous. And I want people to be seen in their courage and taking that risk to start talking about their feelings, right? Because people in their childhood weren't allowed to talk about their feelings, right? Yeah. And then you come to an environment where everyone has to be very strong and everyone has to keep everything bottled up. And, the first responders, you need a place to just relax for a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the benefit of a program like After Action, right? It's like a place. And I think there was a 2-week program that After Action offers as well, which I think is huge, because I think a lot of people that are first responders are afraid to, leave for a long period of time. How beneficial is a 2-week program?
So here's the thing, and that's what I love about the tune-up program is, so I normally see people when the wheels fall off. So there's a little adage that's used a lot. It's we spend a lot of time pulling people out of the river. Instead, let's find out why they're falling in and try to help them at that point. And so the tune-up is, in my opinion, and how it's designed, we don't have to wait for it to go sideways. I don't have to wait till I get a DUI or I get arrested for fighting or whatever it is. After a critical incident or after something that we start seeing signs and changes in behavior and personality and stuff like that, let's catch it early. Let's see if we can get the help early. And all it is, if you look at it, is maintenance. It's maintenance so that you don't let the tires go flat and then the wheels, the lug nuts start falling off, and then that one tire's going that way and the other one's going that, like all that stuff. The 2 week gives you that, again, a tune-up, and kind of just refocuses you. It's no different in concept to like going to a chiropractor. And I used to always believe like, well, they're just going to mess me up so I come back again. And I talked to one of the doctors, and he goes, no, dummy. He goes, we fix you, and then you do the same shit over and over again, and your back goes out. That's what's doing it. And it's no different with police work. And it's so shifting and ever changing and evolving that from one point to another, you could be doing one type of work and this type of, and exposed to so many different things that you'll be like, I'm better. But again, you're constantly exposed to that stuff. And one of the other ones that I quote a lot is Rachel Remen. She wrote a book called Kitchen Table Wisdom. And it's because we believe that we can do this without getting hurt. And she goes, the idea that we could be immersed in suffering and loss on a daily basis and not be touched by it is as unrealistic as being able to walk through water without getting wet. And I think we believe we can walk through water without getting wet as first responders and veterans. We could just take it. It's unrealistic. And so I am then coming out of the water. I'm getting dried off, whether it be treatment, whether it be, support groups, whether it be family, friend, whatever it is. And I'm nice and dry. But guess what? I'm going back into the water again, and I'm going to get wet. I'm going to start seeing these bad things. I'm going to experience, adversity at work. And I do want to say this one thing. A lot of what we see, the danger and stuff, that's a small aspect of what really bothers us. What we're really seeing, and what I'm really seeing, is institutional betrayal. Like you're doing this job. I'm willing to die for this job. And I've come close a lot, right? But then to be kind of almost felt like I was being backstabbed by my agency, that is so painful and that is so damaging. And take that on top of, I'm risking my life, I'm destroying my family because I put all my focus on this work. That's when we talk about going into residential treatment or that tune-up or intensive outpatient program, it gives us a chance to come up for air, even for a second, just to catch our bearings and stay healthy.
One of the things, Chris, I feel like people don't know how to identify is like, what are some of the examples that you have personally dealt with that, first responders deal with, that whether it's, PTSD or depression or anxiety, it's like after their day, they've had a hard day, what are some of those things that like might be going through their head that they don't know is like a normal response to whether it's anxiety or whether it's, they're seeing something horrific and they don't know how to process that. What are some of those things that maybe some people are experiencing, but they don't know are normal, or that it's okay to experience something like that after that?
Yeah, no, that's it's, again, awesome question. The problem is we don't see one thing. So, but let's say if we had one shift and we saw one thing, we're probably going to be okay. We'll be able to focus it and stuff like that. But if you work a shift, and some folks are working 12-hour, 10-hour shifts, or at length, and you have about 15 different things to process. Mm-hmm. So when you go home, your mind's racing. And by the way, when you go home, you're like, I'm going to leave work behind. I got bills to pay. Oh my God, the grass didn't get cut, or this person has to go to a dance. We're never getting the opportunity to process it. So how that manifests primarily is, ultimately, is sleep. And we'll see a lot of folks struggling with sleep and just getting a good rest, to recharge our batteries. The other thing in combination with the sleep, when that happens, and I'll just speak from experience, is I know how to get to sleep. I'm going to throw down and drink as much as I can to pass out. There's a distinct difference between passing out and going to sleep as waking up and coming to. Two very different things. And when you drink like that and you pass out, you're not getting that. You're not getting to the point in your sleep where you're getting that recharge back. You're not doing anything. So these effects slowly, and then you start seeing take shape in like cynicism, or, you know what, I'm exhausted, I just want to stay in and not do anything. Well, you haven't done anything all day. Well, I'm not physically tired, I'm mentally tired, and I'm not given the opportunity to process it. And so what we see with first responders and vets a lot of times is they'll have one or two things that are really like circling. We call them intrusive images, like images that are just kind of playing over and over again. Well, there's treatment for that. There EMDR, there's cognitive behavioral therapy, all that stuff to kind of work through it. What I will tell you is the stuff that we think is bothering us, it's just the tip of the iceberg. It's the latest thing that we're focused on, but there's about 14 years of trauma built up that we don't even know. And that's the problem that we see is we don't know what we need to fix. And we don't know how to fix what we're not even recognizing is a little bit slightly off. So again, resetting, getting that opportunity to sleep, getting stable physically and mentally is so key. And so we start seeing it in sleep, substance issues, risk-taking behavior, gambling. I mean, you name the degree to which you can go to the extreme, that's what you're going to start seeing. But it all boils down to it's not what they're doing, it's if it's a departure from their normative behavior to an extreme. Then we start saying, all right, well, he drinks all the time, but he just finished 14 beers instead of 6. If that makes sense. Oh my goodness. Uh-oh. They look very concerned, and when you freeze like that, it's like you're listening. So I get all like, oh, they're paying attention, but they're frozen. That's awesome. That's all good. It's all good. I'm sure.
Can you still hear us, Chris?
Yeah. Nah, you're frozen. I hear a little bit. I heard a noise.
We're still.
Yep, I see you, and you're moving.
One of the thing is, oh, there we go again. Can you hear us now?
I got you now.
One of the things saying was there seems to be such a stigma with people having to like push through. I've been there, pushing through these feelings and going like, oh, that was a hard day. Like, oh, it's normal to be dealing with all this crazy stuff that I'm dealing with, whether you're a firefighter, first responder. I just got to push through it.
Yeah.
Which is not almost fair to the person, because why has that become the label? Like, oh, we just got to push through it and keep going, So
there's a couple schools of thought. I'm a big proponent that a lot of the stuff we see is damaging, but on the flip side of that, and I think you guys see it in your profession, is that you guys have a high threshold, as we do, of what we can tolerate. Again, to what the circumstances may be different, but we normally have people in the public eye or that have some semblance of notoriety are held to a different standard. And that's really no different when you break it down to first responder, with maybe the added component of some potential violence, right? The problem is we have such a high threshold. We tolerate so much. And we're like, could you imagine going over there to a call or going to something that's very mundane and it bothering you? You wouldn't say anything.
Sure.
Now, if it's extreme, you hurt yourself, you're like, oh, I can say something. No different than if I go to a house to search it and I'm looking for somebody who I think is hiding, waiting to stab me or shoot me, but I get nervous and I go in the house and then nobody's there. They're like, what's the problem? There was no issue. The problem is we're like, all right, we'll stuff that down. But I have two schools of thought. I think that experience can lead to one of two different things. It can either bring us down and it can bring us up. There's such thing as post-traumatic growth. One of the quotes that I use all the time is, and as a Navy, go Navy, we beat Army this year, is the best sailors aren't made in calm seas. And sometimes we need that adversity and those hard times to grow from it. It's like breaking a leg. When it heals, it's probably, if you do it right, it's probably going to heal stronger. So we have that post-traumatic growth. Or I'm looking at Rachel and Jesse, and they're going through tough times and they're killing it. They're doing it. I look at that and I'd be like, hey, I think I could do it because they're doing it. That's vicarious resilience. Like, I'm seeing you struggle and go through it and successfully navigate it. I can do it. So there's vicarious resilience. There's post-traumatic growth.
That's a huge thing you just said, post-traumatic growth, which I've never heard that phrase before, which I think is amazing because, people that have gone through post-traumatic stress disorder and then knowing that they can grow from that, I think is so important to, to touch upon. Is like you said, being in that adversity and then being able to grow from that adversity. Like you can grow from that, what you're saying, which I think is amazing.
Yeah, it's not all bad. It's not all bad. It's I mean, we get conditioned to a certain degree, but sometimes the stuff that we go through makes us stronger. I will tell you, I worked closely with some of the folks in rape crisis centers, and you want to talk about strength. I met somebody who was maybe 4'9", 80 pounds, and was the strongest person I've ever met in my life. Just that internal strength, it was unbelievable. So again, and by the way, what that person experienced, I think would have broken me indefinitely. But she handled it unbelievably. And so again, that's that growth. And I look at her and I'm like, if she can do it, I can do it, or at least try. That's the big thing. I may not get there, but I'll be damned if I'm not going to try my best to get there. Mm-hmm. And I hope I never get to the point where I'm like, I'm all good. I always want to be thriving. I think that's what kind of keeps us alive and healthy. And again, going to treatment doesn't fix you. It gives you the tools to point you in the right direction, because first responders and vets don't want to be fixed. We want to be given the tools to fix or help ourselves. And technically we're not fixing shit. We're just being more healthy.
You said they don't want to be fixed. Is that what you said?
No, we don't want to be fixed. We want to be given the tools to fix ourselves, right, or to be healthy ourselves. We don't want to be relying on somebody. But the problem is, for sometimes, I needed help from my family, like my beautiful wife, Jill. She supports me. There's some folks on here that I've reached out to, Meg and Jeanette and all those folks. These are the folks, these are my friends that I rely on, like when I'm struggling through stuff. And for me, it's so important, right, that to have that type of connection. But yeah, it's interesting what we can experience and go through, and how we can we have a great ability to direct where we go and where we end up.
I'm just digesting that. It's so powerful. And I imagine that there's people on here, people that will listen to this, who would feel so seen and heard by what you're saying, because we had a lot of people reach out to us that I got emotional over reading their messages that just said, thank you for doing this. Like, there's people out there that need to hear these honest discussions and need to know that there's hope, because they're fathers and their mothers and their wives and their husbands, and they might not have a place to go to, but they have someone like you that's talking about how you got through it and how you were able to use the tools to get to the other side. So speaking of that, can you describe a moment that felt very hard for you, maybe a moment when you were struggling with PTSD, and what tools did you use to overcome that moment?
Oh yeah. Well, I've got 1,000 to choose from. I will tell you, I speak all over the country. I've been fortunate to speak all over the world. Really, it's been awesome. But there is no greater support that I've found that's helped me in sharing that load with somebody. I talk to my wife all the time about the struggle, and she also tells me, she goes, "You're being a dick today." I it's easy for me to be like, "Well, this is why," and so I have that open dialogue. But I can't tell you how many times I've gotten a phone call for somebody just to check on me, or I've called somebody and been like, "Hey, you got a second? I want to talk to you about something." And I don't think I've ever, with the exception of one time where somebody was like getting on a plane, I've never been turned down. And so for me, it's finding my tribe, finding the people that surrounding myself with people that know that they're there for me and I'm there for them as well. And it's not so much they're in front or behind me, but they're alongside of me. And it's an ethos that the military has as well, that I'm not fighting for any one specific side. I'm fighting for the person to the left and to the right of me. And the biggest thing that kills us is the feeling of not having that support or that tribe. And we're here and I'm here, and the folks that I work with are here to tell everybody who's struggling, you got somebody. Like we're here for you, and it's the darkest times. And I'll share this one thing, and it, there was two occasions where the work that we do, sometimes we never see the benefits of it. And I was speaking in Boston, and this person had come up and said, "Hey, I saw your show, and blah blah blah, and it saved my life." And I was like, to me, that was more, and that's selfish maybe, but to me, that filled my heart to the point where I was like, "This is why I'm alive. This is why I didn't kill myself. This is why I'm alive today, so that I can help somebody." And in turn, and this is the selfish me, that made me feel so, and I don't want to say important, but valuable. It might be a better term. So when I find that kind of stuff, and by the way, it wasn't just me; it was me and some of the other guys that I work with, Raul and Doug and Chris and Richie and them, that helped her. And I found this concept, and this is what I kind of hang my hat on. We're planting the seed, right, for a tree that will never have the luxury of the shade. So I may not know, who I've helped or how we've helped, but I know I've maybe made an effort to put somebody point them in the right direction, to get him or her into a place where they can help themselves get out of these situations. Because as much as I'd love to be there for anybody, that to me is when we become self-sustaining and finding our own group. And when I say self-sustaining, I mean I find my people that I can talk to. I find the people that I can go to and not talk to. And those people that you can sit with and just that ministry of presence, just sitting with somebody without saying a word, is so healing. And that's, for me, that's how I got through a lot of the stuff that I went through.
So powerful. I'm just imagining, I kind of wanted to do like a little role play for a second, right? So if you're calling me and you're really struggling and you are being hijacked by trauma and you're in fight or flight and you feel like there's no way out right now and that phone weighs 1,000,000 pounds and you call me and I'm your buddy, what is something comforting for you to hear?
So again, this plays into the not fixing. I don't want my friend to fix me. I want to be validated to the certain degree. Like, so, and again, people are a little bit different, and it ebbs and flows in how we respond. For the most part, when I call my buddy, I just want to share it because it's too much for me. And like on my emails that I send everybody out, and I don't know if it's Lena Horne or Lou Holtz that said it, but it's not the load that breaks us down. It's how we carry it, right? Mm-hmm. So I just need help carrying this load. And the best responses that I've gotten have been, "I'm sorry. That's rough. That's what I don't want," is them to go into, "All right, this is what you need to do." All right. Because I'm like, listen, don't tell me what to, then I kind of defend, I'm in a defensive position. But for the most part, I want to share that with somebody, not for them to burden them, but to maybe lighten the load for me. So it's not so much what they say, it's that they picked up the phone in the first place and they're willing to just sit there. And one of the greatest things when I was struggling at dark place, and it was following a shooting that I had. And I met with this individual at a fast food joint. I wasn't eating or anything like that, and struggling, just sobered up enough just to drive over there. And we sat and we talked about everything other than trauma. And for the first time in that time frame, it was the first time I didn't think about how shitty my life was going. And I felt so grateful for that person. I'll drop his name. His name is Mike Mayo. He was the first lieutenant over at Chesapeake PD. Guy's phenomenal. He was single-handedly, if it weren't for him and the conversation we had, I wouldn't be here. I'd have killed myself long ago. But he sat there and he just like, we bullshit about anything and everything. And and when you're going through some stuff, everybody's in that I want to fix you mode. And I didn't need that. And I know a lot of people don't need that. What I will tell people when they call me is, "I'm here for you. What do you want to do? It's at your pace. It's not at my pace. This is not about me. It's about you. So whatever it is that you need to do, whatever it is you need me to do, all you got to do is ask." And it's just being available for somebody. which is so significant, and it's free. It's free just to be available for your friends or somebody in crisis.
If people are in that state, like you were saying, like, and they don't really know what they want, could be suicide, could be, depression, whatever that is. If they don't really know what that thing is, like you said, if you're talking to them, you're saying, what do you need, or what, I'm here for you. Like, if they don't know what it is that they need, are you able to help guide them, or just, like you said, just kind of be there in that moment with them?
Yeah, no. So it's a combination. If I'm dealing with somebody in crisis, for me, hey, I want to just be there, but I want to understand, because people want to be understood. So when somebody talks about ending it or killing themselves, not a lot of people realize this. A lot of people that kill themselves are not suicidal. They just want an end to the pain. So I'm like, if I could wave a magic wand, what's the one thing that I could wave over to fix or correct that you're struggling with? Is it how you feel? And again, the tough ones are when they talk about shame, and that's a killer for our community, is shame. Well, what are you shameful for? And a lot of the times, sometimes there's a legitimate reason to be shameful. I mean, not every first responder or vet does something super awesome and then just struggling. Sometimes we do some pretty horrible things, right? But what is it? Is it something that you're not getting relief from? And I will tell you, physical pain and emotional pain at the same time make it exponentially worse, right? So I just keep seeing this. A lot of stuff that I deal with veterans are like, Jesse, if me and you were deployed and you wanted to use the phone and I had my phone time, I'd be like, hey, listen, you could use my phone time. I'll sit in the Humvee and go outside, and I'll go in and do what we got to do. And tomorrow you'll switch with me. Then I go out and I get killed.
Oh my God.
But you see how how that can kind of affect you.
You blame yourself almost for that or something. Yeah.
But is it your fault? No, it's not your fault.
Right.
So for, again, it's funny because I wish there was an answer for everything, but it's one of those, you got to feel it out. And again, I'll say this till I'm blue in the face. The greatest thing we could do for one another is to be present. There's no judgment, and it's free, and it's healthy. And again, I don't ever push people, but when I don't push people to help them, I push people to help them kind of understand what they're going through. And is it a circumstance? Is it, if they want to talk about it? Otherwise, we'll just sit on the phone and bullshit, or just I'll listen to you cry. I don't give a shit. I've done it myself. I've done it to other people. I have no problem with doing it. But for me, I want to understand: is this something that you can't handle right now, and is it something that I can help with? And again, make them part of the solution, not just me helping them, by myself. Does that make sense?
Totally. It's great. Really amazing, Chris. Just those examples, and I'm so much, and just listening to you, it's really, really incredible.
Yeah, I tell a lot of people that I work with in groups, when you cry, you release cortisol through the tears. There's neuroscience now that proves that. So this whole notion of I'm weak if I cry. No, your body knows exactly what it needs to do to gain relief. Our bodies are very resilient and are built for stress. It's just that our country has not done a very good job at supporting people and helping them move through the stress, right? So much of group is really teaching people how to feel their feelings, how to provide language that comforts one's nervous system, right? How to provide, a sensory modulation room, which Bonnie does at After Action, which has been such an incredible tool and resource for people. So grateful to be a part of a company providing such a rare solution, and it really is a solution because I see they are.
It's frozen up again, but I think you're talking about the sensory rooms. Right? Oh, there you go. You're back.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're right. You're right. You were talking about.
So yes, I was just going into why a program like After Action is so beneficial, and I am there all the time seeing how beneficial these programs are, why it's important as a first responder to go be around other first responders. I see the light that turns on. I see their smiles return to their faces. I see the just so appreciative of the help that they're getting. So I just want to say, if anyone out there is needing support and is needing any help, please go to afteraction.care. Chris, I want to cry now because I when I meet someone like you and I just see what you've done for our country, that people don't even people need to hear these stories, and the fact that we provide more tools for people it's a privilege. And you are a true hero and an amazing human being. And I appreciate you taking the time. And I know you'll be back on this 100%. We're going to be doing social media videos together. And again, providing more support.
Perfect.
Yeah. And if anyone who's watching, you're also needing any additional support, you can go and find After Action on Instagram, AM Healthcare on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook. And a big shout out to Arthur Mogilevsky, who is the owner of AM Healthcare.
Arthur,
good buddy and friend of mine who I used to do the Got Mental Health podcast with. And I'm so honored to do this with my brother. And
I'm Jesse Cove. So happy to be here. And Chris, this has been great.
No, it's been awesome, brother. I appreciate it. And you guys just keep on doing what you're doing.
By the way, I did see there was a question that came into the comments here. I don't know if you can see that, Chris. I don't know if you had a minute to answer that. It says, how much falls on leadership to develop trauma-informed policy as it relates to SUD or co-occurring disorders?
A lot. It falls. So, and I'll answer that. It's not a problem. So I brought it up to my leadership when I was back on the job, and I was told by leadership, by a toxic leader, that change happens from the bottom up. And I said, that's a coup. I said, change. You're driving this ship. You need to affect the change. You need to be that servant leader. You need to be the one that's saying, hey, listen, this is what we need for our people, if only to have a healthier, less litigious or liable kind of the police department or agency or organization. So it's important. And just think about it. Look at a department. Let's say you have 500 to 2,500 sworn police officers or firefighters or medics or the military. How many of those people do you think are struggling? A lot more than you think. And we are walking wounded. And I did a presentation talking about my suicide attempts and drinking and stuff like that. I talked to an organization about how I had to sober up, and my partner picked me up to drive me around until I was sober enough to go into work. Mm-hmm. And then I got done speaking and they were like, what's going on? I said, guys, you think that's scary? I'm talking about it. That's what should scare you, is all the people that aren't talking about it.
Right.
So the days of like putting our head in the sand are kind of long gone. And the other thing to speak to that question more organizationally is there are current standards, statewide and federally standards, that require there be some sort of wellness program within these agencies, albeit vague, that they have it set up. They have to address some of the most significant issues, which are substance abuse or substance use disorders and mental health. So yeah, it does fall on them significantly, but heavy as the crown.
And sorry, last question I'm going to ask, because I think this is important. I think people are probably afraid to be honest, because they're probably afraid to lose their job. So who would people reach out to in their department?
So again, on the department, if they're not trusting certain people, it doesn't cost. I mean, you have insurance for a reason to go talk to somebody outside of your department who's mental health, or reach out to us. I spend more time directing people towards resources that are local and regional to them than I do anything else. So if you have a question about it, reach out. There's a slew of mental health, both master's level clinicians, nonprofit groups. We got a couple nonprofit groups out here. Meg, big shout out to you. Make everything good. That are just phenomenal. That'll help guide you. But if you have problems or you don't want to go to your own command or your EAP, your employee assistance programs, then seek somebody out. Go online. Go check out the Fraternal Order of Police's wellness page. You can contact me there, or there's a list of vetted providers, which, again, it's all about how much you're willing to put forth to get yourself into a better spot. But you know, if you want to make the excuse of I have no resources because I don't want to talk to my department, well, then don't talk to your department. Talk to somebody else. Find it. That's again, first responders. We thrive on complaining and not doing stuff. I give $100 to a first responder, and he or she'll complain they're not in 20s. You know what I mean? Like we thrive on just complaining and finding a reason why not to do things. But when it gets to the point, if you really need help, reach out. You can contact me through After Action. Get up with Rachel or any of the guys that I work with Doug or Raul. And the stuff that I do over with Trauma Behind the Badge with Chris Fields, Doug, myself, and Raul, that's what we do. If you're scared to call anybody at your place, give us a shout. I will always pick up the phone for you guys.
Amazing, Chris. Amazing.
Awesome. Chris, thank you so much. I look forward to
first of many more conversations.
Yes. Big shout out to Cobra Kai.
No mercy.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks so much, Chris.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Take care.